Hey everybody, Aaron here. Welcome back to another anime review. Today we look at episode 5 of Alderamin of the Sky. So, last week's episode we had a lot of stuff happen, but in general this week we're going to have more so a flashback episode. This whole episode was a flashback showing Yattori and Ikta as children and how their bonds formed together, what made them the people they are now and how their friendships became a thing. Now, one thing I say right now is I didn't know how this would be, a whole flashback episode. Sometimes flashback episodes in any show are kind of weak sometimes, that's typically what I expect from flashbacks. But I have to admit, overall, I felt like this episode was really well done, and honestly, it had just a little bit of everything to make it so it was enjoyable and always held my interest from beginning to end. So honestly, very solid episode. But let's talk what happened in the episode overall. So we have Yatori when she was a young girl being asked by her father, what do you plan on doing? And she goes, I want to learn from the general, Ikta's father. And so she plans on going there, and she ends up meeting, of course, Ikta's father. This is the first time we see the general himself, and we also see a young Ikta. Now, from here on out, essentially what this episode does is it deviates from a lot of things. What we really see is we see Yattori as a very stiff character in the beginning. She's very smart, and the one thing is that when she's told about science, because as you all know, Ikta is all about science, and we learn a little bit more about how that became to be too in the course of this episode. But we see that Yattori understands a lot. She's not an idiot. She's a very smart child, but it's made her a very stiff child. And the one thing that Ikta talks about it with her is, hey, why don't you be a little bit more formal, or less formal around us? I mean, I'm a kid too, just like you, and you talk like a grown up. And she realizes that she's never really been around other children. Her father was very strict, it seems like, and was only focused on the I think her name's Ixem. So that's their family name. They were only focused on teaching her that method and that way of life. Thus, why she's a master swordsman. She was focused and determined to be a soldier at a very young age. But that made everything else about her, the way she talks with other people, her reactions, and her sense of being very odd for a child. But luckily, Ikta understands that. What? He still wants to be her friend, and they end up going on like a kind of bunch of fun little missions together. And this actually is very significant to this kind of how Ikta becomes the way he is. If you think, oh, these are just kind of goofy little missions and all that, they're actually, if you think about it, very, very interesting. Because, for example, the first mission they have to go on is to trap another general. He's like or more so like a lieutenant, into a hole. Now, it comes off as funny and jokey and a little bit prankish, but the thing is that if you really think about it, they are trying to employ tactics of manipulation. He has it where he sees two holes in the general, or not, I keep saying general, the lieutenant sees the two holes and knocks one of them and goes, oh, that's not going to work on me, kid. And he walks over toward them, completely not realizing there was a third hole right in front of him, and falls right into it. Showing that Ikta was thinking a little bit outside the box. He knew that, the first two were obvious, but if he made it so obvious, the other guy would fall for the less obvious. So it shows that there was tactics behind that. The next mission they go on is a mission where it's to try to steal from this one old lady that has all this fruit. I guess she's like the town fruit person. She has all these fruits and vegetables and stuff like that. They took like half of them in general, but they used deploy tactics. They used decoy, having Yattori talk to her, and meanwhile at the same time Ikta gather all the supplies by Yattori throwing them back towards them. And this is how their friendship is formed. They start hanging out with one another, and over the course of a couple weeks, you hear that they are always together during training missions and other things like this. Now, their biggest bonding moment, and where we really see them kind of become together, essentially, is when they go on a mission with the two other scientists that were introduced early on. And when the two other scientists forgot an item left back all the way in the village, they have to leave these two kids by themselves. Unfortunately, when they are by themselves, they're attacked by a bunch of hungry wolves. And these wolves are determined to get food because, as Ikta tells Yattori, apparently there's been a very bad drought of food and water, thus making them very, eager to get food from any source. They usually probably wouldn't attack humans, but because they're starving, they need to do this. So they're willing to go attack these kids. Now, Yattori and Ikta are now forced to kind of take refuge inside the little house, and they start setting up various traps. Ikta uses his brains, which he clearly has even when he was a kid, to set up traps for the wolves, to set up decoy tactics, all these things that we saw him learning as those little missions were happening before. He uses a lot of these here, so it goes to show you that those weird kind of goofy things were really very significant, and they were taught to him to do by his father. So it's understandable why he's the way he is when he grows up. But they keep having to survive against these wolves, and at one point they get in a precarious situation where Yatori's like, "I'll sacrifice myself for you. Don't worry. You'll get out of here alive no matter what." And he goes, "No, we're gonna both get out of here alive." And this is where he said the line from last week. If you guys remember, when Yatori had killed all those soldiers, she was in a very dire situation in her own mind. I don't think she felt anything at that moment, but luckily Ikta came over and she was reminded of a flashback, which is this is the flashback right here, saying that I will be your left hand and I'm here for you, meaning that he says that he wants to be there for her and they are going to work together no matter what and they will survive. And in the end, they're able to fight off using a lot of more tactics. They set the whole place on fire when all the wolves are inside. They kill them as they come out. They kind of just employ ambush tactics on them. But overall, they're able to survive against the werewolves, the wolves attacks and werewolves. That's funny. But yeah, they survive against the wolves' attack and are luckily enough they able to survive till the next day. And we see that at least Yatori gained some experience from that and also realized that, hey, these are living beings doing what they have to do. And her kind of demeanor changed a little bit from this experiment and this issue, I should say. Now, we also learn, though, this is the last time that essentially these two will be together, at least for a while, because that's when Ikta's father, the general, got kidnapped, or captured most likely, and the mother and the son disappeared. But then many years later, Ikta comes back now a teenager, and what we saw from before, and comes and gets Yatori out of the kingdom that she's in currently to kind of save her life from the hardships he's dealing with. Apparently, we don't know really too much about what these hardships were. I presume they maybe were explained a little bit more in the light novels, but I'm not 100% sure. I can only assume that maybe the area she was living in was under a lot of rule or heavy rule of some sort, and that's why she didn't become a soldier until meeting Ikta later on. But we don't really know that from now. We just know that he came back for her, and that from there, that's where the rest of the story continues, where we're currently at. So I overall really enjoyed this episode. I thought it was very powerful. I loved the characters. I loved how they were explained. I mean, Ikta and Yatori are my favorite two characters from the show so far. Torue's probably a secondary, and the princess is like, a third there. But these are my two favorites from the show, and I'm glad they focused on them because it just really shows the bond that they had, and it kind of gives us some backstory to how they got that bond in the first place. Because I would have been kind of annoyed if they would have did this another way. I think that having this whole episode focus on these two was a really good idea. It might seem like to some filler, or you might seem like too much of a flashback episode, but honestly, I think it just worked out perfectly overall. And I'm really, really digging. Can't wait till next episode, I should say. But I'm digging the show in general. I really do think this is an awesome show. Anyways, guys and girls, that's it for today's review. As always, guys, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, the share button. The whole nine. I will talk to you all later. Have a great, great day. Bye bye, everyone.